What if I told you that local SEO is actually one of the easiest marketing channels of all time? Well, it turns out there's actually only one main ranking factor that makes over 80% of the difference. What I mean by that is obviously full transparency, there's more than one local SEO ranking factor. Just by optimizing this factor alone, I've talked to and seen actual business owners and digital marketers rank properties number one in Google Maps. So this one thing, and it's going to sound like common sense when you hear what I'm about to say, but when you have this one thing absolutely right, you show up number one regardless of a ton of other stuff, which is kind of crazy, and it almost feels like Google Maps is broken. So with that being said, what is the factor? Well, the factor is actually reviews. And this is something that's not new. And a lot of people who have been through my courses and a lot of people that I've talked to, kind of one-on-one on Facebook and things like that, have confirmed this over time. And the reality is that this is kind of frustrating because when people hear me say this, they say, well, that's great, but I don't have actual control over my reviews, right? I can't, get the X amount of reviews within this amount of time. And so it's kind of almost a catch-22 because if the business doesn't already have customers leaving reviews, so if they don't have a lot of customers coming in, it can be really hard to actually pull this off. And so there's a few different kind of tools and resources and methods that you can actually employ to get reviews coming in more frequently. Okay, so coming in at number one, ask your customers. Now, I'm going to give you an actual tool, like I promised. I'm not going to clickbait here. So there are ways where you can automate the process or make it easier for you or make it autopilot so that people start leaving reviews and they know to do that. Because remember, the golden rule in marketing, and you probably have heard this, and I'm going to grab the mic for dramatic effect because it's true, is people won't do what you want them to do until you tell them what you want them to do. So what I mean by that is that people aren't going to leave reviews unless you tell them. Now, I know there's a lot of back and forth about, well, I don't want to harass my customers and I don't want to breathe down their necks and I don't want to seem like I'm like, hey, you have to leave a review and, all this kind of stuff. But the reality is that most people don't care. And if you ask politely and nicely, people will leave reviews, right? And you don't have to say like, because this is where you can get into trouble. So you don't want to say like, leave a 5-star review because that leaves a bad taste in people's mouths. But if you just kind of respectfully say in like kind of a chill way, like, hey, by the way, if you could leave an honest review of how your experience was with us, we'd really appreciate it. It would help us out. If you just say something like that, where you're letting the person know, hey, I just want your honest feedback, people are willing to do that, right? People already do that. That's why businesses get reviewed, right? So it's not that bad. And if you do something like that, it's pretty good. I know I've heard from people in the Facebook group and from people I've talked to that some countries have weird laws about like you can't ask people for reviews, but there's a lot of places where you can. So obviously I'm not an attorney. Go check and see if it's something that's allowed. If you can't find anything on it for your country, then most likely it's something that you can completely do, and I'd encourage you to do it. So with that being said, let's get into the tools that you can use for this. So the first tool that you can use for, getting people to leave reviews is a leave a review sheet. And this is basically something that you can create and design on the computer. You can print it out, and it basically is going to have, step-by-step instructions for the customer to actually go leave a review. So it makes it as easy as possible. Depending on who your customer demographic is, you got to keep it simple. If you're a business or, if your client runs a business where it's a lot of older folk as the demographic, you need to lay out instructions, even having, screenshots within the instructions that shows like going to Google, typing in the business name, clicking on the reviews, right? You can do something like that. If it's younger people, you may want to have a QR code on there, right? Because younger gen is going to know how to scan a QR code. And so, you want to make it easy to follow and really showcase the process on the sheet. And then what you can do with this sheet is you can attach it to every single, invoice, receipts, whatever it is that you give customers, you can attach it. So that's number one. Now, coming in at number two, we actually have using table tents. Now, you probably haven't heard of what a table tent is before, and that's because I even had to look up the name for it. But I've seen a lot of people do this where it's like that thing when you go into restaurants and you go to a table and you sit down and they have like a little plastic holder for like a sheet of paper or something at the table. So it's like facing like this. That's a table tent. And so what you can do if you have a type of business where you have like that type of stuff, or you have counters or tables, you can just create a table tent, little sheet, similar process, but you could just have it say, please leave a review. It helps us out, whatever, something like that. You just put something like that in that table tent and then just leave it around your business. It's a super cheap investment. I think table tents, you could probably get them for like $5 on Amazon, right? And it's just going to make a huge difference over time. Unironically, that $5 per table tent, so if you have like three of them, 15, $20, is going to be one of the best uses of your time in terms of investing into your SEO that's going to pay off over a very long period of time, right? So weirdly enough, that's probably a better investment than 99% of what other people are telling you to invest in when it comes to local SEO. So for tool number two, use a table tent. Number three, we have email your email list asking for reviews. A lot of people have email lists, they have email newsletters, they have captured audiences for their marketing. And something you can do is if you already have the list and it's free or very low cost for you to reach out to them, do it, right? It could be a Facebook group, a Facebook page, YouTube, community tab, like whatever it is, you can tell people, hey, if you haven't already, go leave us a review. It would really help us out, right? And people will do that. So when there's a will, there's a way. And, if you're capturing your customers' information, which you should be doing, by the way, that's a separate topic for another day. But if you're doing that, you can reach out to them and say, hey, have your base help you, right? It doesn't hurt. It's free or low cost for the business, and people don't mind it. I've gotten a lot of objections about that one. Like, well, I don't want to beg for reviews, and you're not begging, right? You're saying, hey, by the way, right? This doesn't even have to be in its own standalone thing. This can just be an additional point in an existing post, right? So you could have your typical posts that you already do with your emails or whatever, and then you could just say, oh, and by the way, if you could take a minute and do this, it would help us out. So that is number three. So with that out of the way, now we kind of have to ask ourselves the big question: why are reviews so important, and why do they move the needle so much? Doesn't it seem bad that just by having more reviews than everyone else, you can game the system? So while that sounds really bad on the surface, right? If we dig deeper, it actually makes sense. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I actually think it's a good thing that Google is doing this, because here's the thing. As SEOs, we game the system. We try to do everything we can to get our business or a client's business to show up at the top of search. It's just what we do, right? And then there's a whole community of black hat characters and people who, will try to outsmart Google. And this has been a thing since SEO's inception. And so the reality is that if these people start promoting things that are unethical, which it happens, right? Just like with everything else, marketers aren't perfect. There's a percent of the community which is super toxic and which is, abused Google and scam people. It's just how it is, right? Now, granted, the majority aren't like that, and I'm not saying people are like that. I want to be completely clear. But, there's a risk of that, right? Google would be held liable if, they're showing a lot of scam results in the top of their search, right? People literally, people rank and rent already, right? Like people literally put businesses that aren't there in cities to try to make money, right? Like this is a thing. So one of the only ways that Google can kind of fight this consistently and stay at the top is by listening to user feedback. and user feedback is reviews. So when you think about it like that, it makes sense why this is the case. And like I said, I think it's a good thing. Because if a bunch of users are leaving a bad review saying, hey, this thing is really, really bad, right? That is going to, go back to Google, and or kind of feed the algorithm where that result is then going to actually get pushed down. So it actually becomes a good thing that it's getting pushed down because of these reviews or pushed up, right? Good businesses that operate good, Google wants to show them higher because, as y'all have probably been told a million times before, search engine optimization is about, providing the best content possible. Google wants to show the most authoritative, high quality sites at the top. And while Google and shittification has been a thing for a while now, and that's a whole separate kind of can of worms topic, it's important to understand that with what we're talking about right now, and this kind of stuff, this was at least the original intent, and I hope that it stays this way, because if the ranking algorithms change for local, which it hasn't, to be fair, local SEO actually hasn't changed that much for a very long time. But if it does change, it could actually end up making local search really, really bad for the user. But I'm going to wrap up this video here because we've been going on 11 minutes. But please leave a like if you found anything I had to say helpful. Leave a comment down below if you agree or disagree, and let me know how you feel about reviews being the most important ranking factor for search. And if you haven't already, please tap that subscribe button if you want to be an awesome SEO ninja. And with that being said, I will catch you in the next one. Like and subscribe if you want to become an SEO ninja.